Thanks for tuning in to PodCatalyst, the official podcast of IABC. Today's episode is hosted by IABC Executive Director Peter Finn with guest Tim Johnson, President of UPRAISE Marketing and Public Relations. Tune in as they discuss how PR professionals are adapting to an AI-driven landscape, blurring the lines between internal and external comms, and the growing demand for creative storytelling. Tim shares insights from his own journey, from his early days working on his college newspaper to today as an agency leader, and reflects on how PR has become a vital strategic function in today's tech-driven business world. Plus, Tim shares his thoughts on the growing value of authenticity, especially as AI is becoming more prevalent, ethical considerations when working with influencers, the need for data-driven content, and where he sees PR heading in the next 10 years. Thanks again to Tim for joining us, and let's get started with the show.
Hi, my name is Tim Johnson. I'm the president of UPRAISE Marketing and PR, a subsidiary of RBB Communications. And I think communication connects people and tech by making technologies, particularly complex ones, understandable and relatable.
Well, thanks, Tim. I really appreciate you joining us on PodCatalyst. This is our 71st episode. I'm Peter Finn, Executive Director of IABC. And yeah, I'm really, really glad that you're able to join us and hear more about your background and maybe what you're working on, and just thoughts about the PR field in general. But I know, Tim, you've had a storied career in public relations, now serving as president of the marketing public relations firm UPRAISE. But how did you break into the industry? How did you start out in PR?
Well, I kind of backed into it. In college, I was editor of the school newspaper, and one of the trustees of my school was Marjorie Longley, who in the late 70s and early 80s was the VP of PR for the New York Times. She liked the paper and sought me out when she was on campus and invited me to meet with her in New York after I graduated. And so I did so, and she introduced me to people who landed me my first job in PR.
And I think one of the things that we hear from some of our members is that this idea of almost mixternal comms, where people are wearing a lot of different hats. But I was just curious, throughout your career, how have you seen PR evolve in terms of the work that you do, and what are the kind of the drivers behind that change?
Yeah, I've seen a few things. I think compared to earlier in my career, business leaders at the C-suite and even below that really recognize the value of PR as a core function. I remember early on, it would really be hard to get the attention of people beyond the VP of communications, but now it's quite a bit easier, and I think they really value what we do. I think driving that growth is the number of channels there are to tell the story, traditional media and blogs and contributors and platforms like Medium and Reddit and Substack. And that instills kind of a new discipline that communicators have to make certain that those channels get the story straight. One need, because most of my work is in B2B tech PR, is the need to infuse creativity into what we do, because so many tech products today are abstract and hard to understand for the common person. So it's easy as a tech PR person to talk about cloud-based infrastructure, but people, on the street are more likely to understand and be enthusiastic if you can talk about storing your photos and videos and important memories so you can look at them anywhere, anytime, if you will. So we spend a lot of time trying to build that creativity into what we do.
Yeah, and in terms of roles, I mean, we've kind of seen this blurring of the lines between PR, marketing, and journalism. And I know there are a lot of people, within our membership that started out in journalism and are now working as communications professionals for different organizations. But what do you think that means for people that are working in communications?
Yeah, I think this abundance of communications channels, it's more important than ever, like I mentioned a minute ago, that we have to get our stories really clear and straight and easy to understand and tightly coordinated with other marketing channels so that those people, whether they're editors or influencers, all understand the story. And another part of our role is we have to identify editors and influencers that are reputable and we think will tell a clear story and excite them with those disciplined messages. And then something that concerns me a lot and that I deal with every day is that the blurring of those roles also blurs the ethics of those roles. And so it makes it more important than ever that before we expose clients to a person, whether it's an editor or an influencer, that we've vetted them for their credibility, if you will.
Actually, could you talk a little bit more about that in terms of the ethics? So there's a different approach to ethics between the different disciplines. Is that what you mean? Or
I
I was,
feel like in journalism, there's still a code of ethics where people have to get multiple sources, where they have to
yeah,
check facts, where they have to at least make an attempt to tell an unbiased story. Whereas, influencers have their point of view, and that's great, but they're not bound by any of those guidelines.
got it. Yeah, yeah, that's a really good point. Well, so we have a question. You probably have, everyone's getting this question, but artificial intelligence. We know it's top of mind for folks in all different industries and fields. But how are you automating AI and what you do in terms of your PR strategy for clients and I guess also just get your thoughts on the ethics piece as well. How you're addressing that and the work that you do.
Yeah. I mean, like everybody else, and I won't say anything new here, we're continuously experimenting with how to integrate AI into our day-to-day activities while preserving the quality of our work, the creativity of our work, and of course the ethics. And today we use AI for market research to edit content we're creating and sometimes to generate original content. But we're very adamant about this. We view AI as an assistant. It doesn't replace editing and improvements made by humans on account teams. And we would never ask AI to generate content that goes unreviewed by a human first. And then lastly, we're also very careful to check AI sources independently, both for accuracy and to make certain that we're honoring copyrights.
Curious to hear your thoughts on we know AI is a PR communications are professions that will likely be significantly impacted by AI as it evolves. And I was just curious, what your thoughts are on the profession and how it evolves, and will there be a reduction in workforce, or is this an opportunity to really grow those professions even more? Thinking about AI as more of a support piece and assistant that will help grow the profession, or something that will reduce the number of professionals working in these fields.
I do not think it will reduce the number of professionals. I think over time it will increase the number of professionals. I think that AI will allow PR teams to focus on more value-added activities. I keep talking about creativity, but it'll allow us to do more things more economically because we know some of the basic activities can be covered by AI, things like media lists and admin functions that allow us to have the budget and the time to do more value-added activities.
And one of the things that I've talked with a few people about is, if it's replacing some of the entry level positions. So, some of the work that maybe you came in on, years ago, starting out your career, is that something that can be done by AI? So if that's happening, then the impact on higher ed and the way that people are being trained, or so I'm not asking for a definitive answer, but I just wonder if you had any thoughts on that, how it might be different for somebody coming out of college or the university, and the kinds of things that they might be doing now at at an agency or for an organization that's going to look a little bit different than it did a few years ago because of AI.
Certainly, what account coordinator, for example, was doing 10 years ago and what they'll be doing going forward is quite different. But I also think the proliferation of communication channels means that the junior people will have many, many more channels to research and vet that they would have 10 years ago. So
Yeah.
that's, just one example.
Yeah. Well, that's very good to hear. So I guess another thing is just in terms of, do you think that enough organizations are thinking about the ethics of AI? I mean, it's sort of like the technology has just accelerated, exponentially, but are the ethics, tracking with that, acceleration, or, are the ways that we're thinking about it? I mean, do you feel that that's getting enough attention, and not necessarily from a policy perspective, but that organizations are working towards that?
I do. I think the vast majority of people want to use AI in an ethical way. And by now have probably seen enough pitfalls of what happens when it's used without any sort of guardrails.
Yeah.
So I'm not really concerned about that from either the company side or the agency side.
Yeah.
All the people that I talk to are very focused on getting it right. And we all
That's
know that what's right today may not be right like 6 months ago.
Yeah, yeah. No, good point. Well, and so the other thing I want to talk to you a little bit about is just crisis communication and reputation management. So, what's the most misunderstood aspect of crisis communications today?
So I think that crisis communications needs to be thought about every day and to be built into every program that's going on every day. I think a misconception is that crisis communications is a set of activities that gets put in a drawer until, the CEO does something wrong, and then you pull it out and do it. I think part of the goal of an ongoing PR program is to build trust and credibility. And if it does that and that accumulates over time, then when something negative happens, good PR teams can kind of draw down on that credibility and their answers will be given more credence than if that credibility does not exist.
Yeah. And so today we are in constant communication. There's a high level of visibility. How do you advise clients to maintain authenticity when facing public scrutiny?
Yeah. So I know it sounds trite, but I tell clients, and particularly client spokespeople, to be themselves. And, a story I like to tell is we have a client whose CEO is a brilliant guy, and they have a customer conference every couple of years for a couple of thousand people. And when he speaks, it's not especially smooth. He goes off on tangents. He often speaks half again as long as he's supposed to. But because of those flaws in how he speaks, and he asks himself things and then answers them on the stage, because of those things, he comes off as very credible. Because
Yeah.
one, what he's saying is really smart, and two, the fact that he's not overpolished makes him more believable.
That's really interesting. I mean, I feel like there are a lot of organizations that are sort of catching on to that, where even if it's on, like a video or something, it doesn't have to be the most polished, high production piece, but as long as it's, it's sort of getting the message across, but it's almost, it feels more authentic. Is that something that you're saying, like that, having sort of, especially with, when it comes to people presenting, that, almost being too polished kind of works against you?
I think it can. I mean, some people are very good and polished and don't go through media or speaker training, and other people, you can put them through all the speaker training you want, and they're never going to be super polished.
Yeah.
And I think authenticity, particularly in this age of AI, has become increasingly important and will continue to be more important.
That's a really good point. So, how do you encourage your clients to have transparency without compromising, their strategic advantage?
Yeah. So transparency means different things in different industries. So if you're doing PR for a bank, they have very strict guidelines in terms of what transparency means. If you're doing PR for a B2B startup, those guidelines don't exist. So it's a very different can of worms. So when we start client engagements, one of the points we discuss is how transparent we want to be or need to be and in what time frame, because we want clients to be strategically transparent. And what we mean by that is to selectively reveal information that excites their audience, but not discuss other initiatives that could tip off competitors. And so, for example, a lot of times companies will come to us and they'll be all excited about making a product announcement. But one of the things we'll ask them is, do we want to make this product announcement now? Or do you want to announce this product under the table and more quietly build up some sales and build up some momentum before competitors realize what you're doing?
Yeah. So, just kind of getting back a little bit to talking about sort of the qualities of, what makes great communications professional or leader. I mean, what, as you look into the future for communications and PR, what are the qualities that you think make a great leader today, especially, in your profession? And then what advice do you have for those that are, as we were talking about, breaking into PR and coming out of school?
So I think a good communications leader has the same attributes of any leader, and that is that they're clear in their messaging, clear in their direction and their strategy, that they are good listeners and empathetic to their audience, And then lastly, that they respect other people's points of view and they persuade people based on data and facts and logic versus either pulling rank or bluster or something else. In terms of professionals coming out of school, I think there are tons and tons of opportunities, many more so than when I got out of school. And while it can be intimidating to break in, it's really an exciting time in our industry as a result of AI, as a result of growth in technology and in other sectors.
And along the lines of thinking about the future, I'm going to ask you to pull out your crystal ball and, what's one bold prediction you have for the future of PR over the next, 5 to 10 years?
So I think our industry will be characterized by 5 qualities. And the first is the increased integration of AI, both to improve our work and then to take over an increasing number of admin functions so we can do more and better work. As I mentioned a minute ago, a greater emphasis on authenticity and a focus on being real, given all the AI created content that's out there today. I think content itself will be more data driven, whether it's original content developed by an organization or repurposing content to tell a story. And then the continued evolution of PR into a more important and strategic business function that will have the attention of the C-suite. And then lastly, focus on creativity to ensure new technologies are relatable and understandable, even to tech-averse consumers.
Well, and just a little bit about you, Tim. I mean, what outside of your work in marketing and PR, and you've got a big job, but what are you passionate about outside of work?
A couple of things. So I'm a language and I'm a history nerd. So I
Oh,
love to read and I love to watch documentaries. I live in Northern California, so I love to spend time hiking with my dog and doing other outdoor sports. And then I love to cook, which is really a lot of fun, but also not very good for my waistline.
yeah, I have that problem. Well, Tim, thanks so much for speaking with me and just getting your perspective on things. I mean, it's been a pleasure, and yeah, I really appreciate your time.
Great. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks for listening to PodCatalyst, the official podcast of IABC. If you've enjoyed today's episode, please be sure to subscribe, rate, and review. Have a suggestion for a future episode? Send us a note at catalyst@iabc.com. To discover all IABC has to offer, visit our website at iabc.com. Until next time.